In the summer of 2017, a young couple, Ethan and Sarah Albright, vanished without a trace from the rim of the Grand Canyon. They were on a backpacking trip to celebrate their 5-year anniversary. Their car was found at a deserted trailhead, its doors unlocked, a half-eaten bag of trail mix on the dashboard, a testament to their sudden, inexplicable departure. For months, search parties scoured the treacherous canyons and winding paths, but found nothing. No remains, no torn clothing, no discarded gear. The FBI, local law enforcement, and a multitude of volunteers worked tirelessly, but the vast, unforgiving landscape swallowed them whole. The case went cold. Theories arose. They had staged their disappearance, a terrible accident had befallen them, or perhaps they had simply gotten lost in the wilderness, succumbing to the elements. The official narrative settled on a tragic, unexplained accident. Their families, left with an agonizing void, erected a small memorial at the trailhead, a quiet marker for a life and a love story that had been abruptly cut short. But 8 years later, in the spring of 2025, a startling discovery by an unrelated person would shatter that long-held belief. A freelance geologist, Dr. Eris Thorne, was mapping a remote, previously unsurveyed fissure near the Havasupai Falls. His drone, equipped with high-resolution thermal imaging, detected a strange heat signature in a narrow cave mouth, one that was not on any existing topographical map. Scaling the steep, sandstone wall, he found a small, hidden alcove. Inside, tucked away from the sun and the elements, were 2 worn, dusty backpacks. The kind meant for a long hike. A tremor of unease went through him. He unzipped one, and inside, among a few clothes and a small medical kit, he found a waterproof digital camera. The memory card was intact. He took it home, his scientific curiosity overriding his sense of foreboding. He plugged the camera into his laptop. He expected to find landscape shots, photos of sunsets, perhaps a few selfies. What he saw was a horrifying tapestry of fear. The final photos were a sequence of frantic, blurry shots. The last one, taken with a flash in the pitch black of the cave, was a selfie of Ethan and Sarah, their faces contorted with terror. But it wasn't just them. Reflected in Sarah's wide, horrified eyes was a third person, a man, his face obscured by shadow, his hand raised as if to strike, a cold, predatory glint in his eyes. The discovery sent a jolt through the quiet life of retired FBI agent Marcus Thorne, a man who had dedicated a decade of his career to missing persons cases. He had worked the Albright case for 2 years before it was declared officially cold, and the image of their faces had haunted him ever since. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was a young man, a geologist, who spoke with a trembling urgency. He described his discovery, the camera, the selfie. Marcus's blood ran cold. He told the young man, Eris, to wait, not to touch anything else, and that he would be there in 3 hours. He wasn't law enforcement anymore, not officially. But a promise he made to the Albright family all those years ago had never faded. He packed a bag, grabbed his old service weapon, and drove. The drive was a blur of asphalt and memories. He remembered Ethan's father, a broken man who had looked at him with a desperate plea in his eyes. Just find them, agent. Give us something. Marcus had failed. He had promised justice, and for 8 years it had eluded him. But now a chance. A flicker of hope in the dark. He found Eris at the entrance to the cave, a young, nervous man with mud on his boots and a camera in his hand. Marcus examined the selfie. The reflection. A third person. The detail was blurry, but there was something. A distinctive ring on the man's right index finger. A large, ornate silver circle with a strange symbol etched into it. An anomaly. Something out of place. This wasn't a tragic accident. It was a cold, calculated act of violence. This was a mystery, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt the familiar, uncomfortable stir of adrenaline in his veins. The hunt was on. Marcus's investigation began where the old one had failed, with the unseen. The initial theory, that Ethan and Sarah had simply disappeared, was now a laughable lie. The photo was proof of a hidden villain. Marcus went to his old contacts, a few trusted colleagues who were still in the bureau. They were hesitant. The case was closed. The official record was a stack of paper a foot thick, gathering dust in a file room. But Marcus had a way of getting people to listen. He showed them the selfie, the reflection in Sarah's eyes. The room went silent. The weight of 8 years of grief and unanswered questions hung in the air. "Who is this man?" a grizzled agent named Miller asked, his eyes squinted at the digital image. "That's what we're going to find out," Marcus said. The first lead was the ring. Marcus had a jeweler friend, a retired forensic analyst, take a look at the high-resolution image. He couldn't make out the symbol, but he could tell it was silver, likely custom-made. It wasn't a class ring or a military emblem. It was something else. He ran a search on all the individuals interviewed in the original case, looking for any mention of a distinctive ring. Nothing, but his gut told him to dig deeper. He reviewed the old police reports, the witness statements, the volunteer lists. He was looking for something that didn't fit, a detail that seemed insignificant at the time, but in the context of the selfie, now screamed for attention. The investigation led him back to a name that had appeared in passing: Samuel Vance. He was a local philanthropist, a wealthy man who owned a series of luxury ranches and was a major donor to the State Park Service. He had provided a team of his own ranch hands to assist with the search back in 2017. He had been a hero, a man who selflessly offered his resources to a grieving community. Marcus remembered him, a tall, handsome man with a charming smile and a calm, reassuring demeanor. He had seemed so helpful, too helpful. Marcus's intuition was screaming. He pulled up a high-resolution photo of Vance from a recent charity gala. He zoomed in on his hands. No ring. But then he found a close-up photo from a local newspaper, taken years ago, at a different charity event. There, on the right index finger of Samuel Vance, was a glint of silver. He couldn't see the symbol, but the shape, the size, the ornate design, it was the same. A cold knot of certainty formed in Marcus's stomach. This was the man in the photo. The man who had been hiding in plain sight for 8 years, a celebrated pillar of the community, all the while a remorseless killer. Marcus felt a surge of rage. He had been right. He had felt it back then, a vague sense of unease, a feeling that Vance's helpfulness was a little too polished, a little too perfect. But he had no proof, just a gut feeling. Now he had a clue, a lead. He wasn't a cop anymore, but he had a network. He had the truth. He started to build a case, not on police files, but on instinct and relentless determination. He needed to find a direct link, something that would put Vance at the cave. He went to Vance's ranches, driving past the manicured lawns and sprawling stables. He felt the weight of his suspicion, a silent accusation hanging in the air. He wasn't there to confront him. Not yet. He was there to watch, to observe, to find the crack in the facade. He saw Vance, a man in his late 50s, a picture of success and respectability, laughing with a group of friends. Marcus knew, with a certainty that was both chilling and exhilarating, that he was looking at a monster. The hunt was now a personal vendetta. He wouldn't rest until he could look Ethan and Sarah's families in the eye and tell them he had found the man who took their children. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, one terrifying detail at a time. The cold case was finally heating up, and the heat was coming from the man no one had ever suspected. Marcus's investigation deepened, a methodical, relentless peeling of layers. He knew he couldn't go to the police, yet with just a blurry reflection and a similar-looking ring. He needed more. He needed to prove a connection. He started with the search party records from 2017. Samuel Vance had provided a crew of his ranch hands, but he had also gone out himself for a few days, personally overseeing the search. His movements were listed as sporadic and uncoordinated, a common occurrence in a large, chaotic search effort. Marcus found the names of the ranch hands who had accompanied him on those specific days. He tracked them down, most of them no longer employed by Vance. He found a man named Luis, a weathered old hand who now worked at a different ranch 100 miles away. Luis remembered the search. He remembered Vance being agitated, strange. He kept getting calls on his satellite phone, Luis recalled, his eyes distant as he thought back. He was acting like he was looking for something specific, not just for the couple. He kept saying, it's not here, over and over. Marcus's mind raced. Vance wasn't searching for the couple. He was searching for the camera, the evidence that could link him to their deaths. He had been cleaning up his own mess, a hidden-in-plain-sight accomplice to his own crime. Marcus pushed Luis further. Did he ever mention the canyon? A specific trail? Luis shook his head. No, sir. He was always vague. Just a certain section of the park. Marcus's next step was to find a reason, a motive. Why the Albrights? They were a young couple, unassuming, and had no known connection to a powerful man like Samuel Vance. The case file from 2017 stated they had gone off the main trail, seeking a more secluded area for their anniversary. The last ping from their cell phones had been from a remote, untrafficked gorge, just miles from Vance's private, off-the-grid lodge. Marcus ran a satellite map of the area, cross-referencing it with the location of the cave where the camera was found. The cave was almost directly across the gorge from the lodge. A sickening picture began to form. Ethan and Sarah had likely stumbled upon something they weren't supposed to see. Perhaps something illegal or incriminating. Vance's lodge was in a remote area, far from prying eyes. Was it a front for something? Marcus's intuition, that stubborn, unwavering internal compass, pointed him toward the darkest possible truth. He went back to the old case files, this time with a new lens. He wasn't looking for the victims, he was looking for the villain. He found a strange note in the original report from a park ranger who had been part of the initial search. The ranger had noted a series of unusual items found near Vance's lodge: empty drums of industrial-grade cleaning chemicals, an old generator, and a makeshift burn pit. At the time, they were dismissed as leftovers from construction or maintenance. But now Marcus saw them for what they were, the tools of a cover-up. The burn pit. He had to go back to the source. Marcus drove to the lodge. It was isolated, quiet, a fortress of wealth and secrecy. He found the old burn pit, a wide, scorched circle of earth. He dug, sifting through the layers of ash and dirt. He found fragments of bone, small and charred, too small to be from an animal. He scooped up a handful of dirt, putting it in a plastic bag. He had to get it tested. He called his forensic analyst friend again, a tense, whispered conversation. He sent the sample via a discreet courier. He knew the risks. He was operating outside the law, a rogue investigator on a personal mission. But the thought of Samuel Vance walking free, a man who had murdered 2 innocent people and then pretended to help find them, was a fire in his gut. The report came back a day later. The bone fragments were human. Too small to get a DNA sample, but unmistakably human. The chemicals had been used to destroy the bodies, to eliminate the evidence, and the burn pit was where it was all disposed of. The confession was already written, not in words, but in ash and bone. Marcus had the proof he needed. He had a motive, a weapon, a crime scene, and a name. He had the truth. Now he had to get justice. With the forensic report in hand, Marcus knew he was on the cusp of something monumental, something that would finally bring closure to a case that had haunted a community for 8 years. He contacted his old supervisor, Captain Davies, a man he had known and respected for decades. Davies was skeptical at first, but Marcus's quiet, steely resolve was impossible to ignore. He laid out the evidence, the selfie, the ring, the location of the cave, the satellite data, and finally, the human remains found at Vance's lodge. He presented it all with a terrifying clarity, each piece of the puzzle locking into place. The silence in the room was a heavy, palpable thing. Davies looked at the documents, his face a mask of disbelief turning slowly to cold fury. He was on the search party, Davies whispered, the reality of the deception hitting him. He was helping us look for them. Marcus nodded. He was looking for the evidence. The camera. He must have known they had it. The theory was solid. Ethan and Sarah had likely seen or heard something at the lodge, something that had made them run, something that made them take a frantic selfie as a final testament to what they had found. They had stumbled into a depraved, sinister world, a world of secrets and violence, and they had become its collateral damage. The unveiling was complete. The face of the villain was no longer a shadowy reflection. It was a celebrated, public figure. The time for caution was over. Davies authorized a full-scale operation, a team of agents and local police officers, all briefed on the new evidence. They were to execute a search warrant on Vance's lodge, a legal maneuver that Marcus had been working on with a retired prosecutor friend. The team moved in at dawn. A sense of electric tension filled the air. Marcus, a silent, observing presence, watched as the tactical team surrounded the sprawling property. They found Vance in his study, a serene, well-appointed room filled with books and priceless art. He was on the phone, laughing, a portrait of a man with no secrets. When the police walked in, his face remained calm. He was the hidden-in-plain-sight villain, and he had worn the mask of respectability for so long it was a part of him. "Mr. Vance, we have a search warrant," Davies said, his voice flat. "This is a mistake," Vance said, his smile still in place, a flicker of condescension in his eyes. "You'll have to explain this to my lawyer." But as the officers began to sweep the property, meticulously documenting every detail, his composure began to fray. They found a hidden sub-basement, a sterile, soundproofed room with industrial cleaning supplies and a heavy-duty incinerator. A single, tarnished police badge was found in a drawer, an anomaly. That Marcus's gut told him was a crucial piece of the puzzle. It didn't belong to Vance. It was the trophy of a man who had enjoyed the hunt. When the evidence was laid out before him, the selfie, the ring, the bone fragments, the incinerator, Vance's calm facade finally broke. His smile vanished. A clinical, chilling silence replaced his bluster. He looked at Marcus, and for the first time, Marcus saw the monster behind the man. "They shouldn't have been there," Vance said, his voice a low, emotionless monotone. "They saw the operation. They saw the truck. I told them to leave, but they didn't. They were scared. They ran. It was a shame, really. Such a nice young couple." It was a confession, cold and matter-of-fact. He described how he had found them, cornered them in the cave, and then methodically, clinically disposed of their bodies. He wasn't remorseful, he was annoyed. Annoyed that his perfect plan had been undone by a selfie and a persistent, retired cop. The confession was a horrific symphony of depravity. Marcus listened, his knuckles turning white as he clenched his fists. The man had no soul. He was a predator, a monster who had been celebrated as a hero. The resolution was swift, but the emotional scars would remain. The media went into a frenzy. The shocking twist of the respected philanthropist being a remorseless serial killer was a story too compelling to ignore. Samuel Vance was charged with the murders of Ethan and Sarah Albright, and with the deaths of several other unidentified individuals whose DNA was found in the sub-basement. The police badge found in Vance's possession was a final, damning piece of evidence. It belonged to an undercover officer who had been working on a human trafficking case, a case that had gone cold years ago. The officer had gone missing in the same general area as the Albrights. Vance had not just been a killer, he had been the orchestrator of a horrifying criminal enterprise. The anomaly, the badge, was the key to unlocking an even darker truth. Marcus attended the trial, a silent, stoic figure in the back of the courtroom. Vance's lawyers tried every angle: insanity, mistaken identity, a smear campaign against Marcus and the police force, but the evidence was undeniable. The selfie, a final plea for help, was a haunting piece of testimony. Vance was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life without parole. The verdict was a moment of profound, quiet relief. Not celebration, but justice. Marcus went to the memorial at the trailhead. He stood there, the cool wind of the canyon brushing his face. Ethan's father and Sarah's mother were there, their faces etched with the lines of 8 years of sorrow. Marcus didn't say much. He didn't need to. They looked at him, and in their eyes he saw not a hero, but a man who had kept his promise. "You found him," Ethan's father said, his voice thick with emotion. Marcus nodded. "We found him." The closure was bittersweet. It couldn't bring their children back, but it had stripped the horror of its anonymity. It had given a face to the monster. The Grand Canyon was no longer just a place of inexplicable tragedy. It was a crime scene with a solved mystery. The case, the one that had haunted him for so long, was finally closed. Marcus drove away from the canyon, the vast landscape no longer a symbol of his failure, but a testament to the power of intuition and the quiet, stubborn persistence of justice. The story of the couple who vanished from the Grand Canyon was no longer a cold case. It was a story of a lie, of a hidden villain, and of a man who refused to give up, even when everyone else had. The truth, like the canyon itself, was a dark, breathtaking, and ultimately unforgiving place. And Marcus Thorne, the determined investigator, had finally brought light to its deepest, most hidden crevices. He had found the ghost and put it to rest. The emotional weight of the case finally began to lift, replaced by a quiet, determined resolve. His work was done. For now.